Happy Wednesday, everyone. It is Wednesday, isn't it? Week's been weird for this guy. So, welcome to the show. This is our first time doing a purposeful, different day for interviews based upon what we talked about on Monday. So, I'm super excited to have more content for you and do something that's dedicated to a specific topic and a specific person and do something we haven't done in quite a while. I'm very excited. Now that we've covered all of that, welcome to the show. I'm honored to be joined today by Joe Dickerson. This guy has been setting the toy collecting community on fire, and not in a destructive way. He's kind of ignited the collective imagination, if you will. And I'm sure Joe will tell you that he took a lot of inspiration from Michael at Retro Blasting, but it's one thing to be inspired, it's another thing to act and create. And then continue to iterate on that creation in a way that just continues to innovate and just blow my mind. And by all accounts, he's an amazing dude. I'm happy to have him on. Please welcome Joe Dickerson. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you? I'm very happy to be here. Yeah, I might as well take this off. You were, I was so, I heard you all the platitudes, and I was like, oh, well, he's obviously talking about something much more interesting than me. Someone who is incredibly successful and famous and brilliant, and that's none of me.
Well, although you may not be, worldwide known, technically speaking, or have like this, marquee thing or anything like that, but the people that know of your work, we all talk about you behind your back in only positive ways. We're always like, "What? How did he do that? Like, how did he do that?" And that's really been kind of the theme over the last year or so. And I just want to catch up with Chad here. I wanted to wait until you were on screen to do that. I see Will McLaughlin, Ted Milich, Bjorn Jorgensen, Jimmy Salzberg. Namaste 123. Nice to see you back. I see the Epic Badger. I see Logic Blaster as well. And Will giving you a direct shout out because I believe you two have met
Yes.
um, at the meetup. He brought stories back from Georgia. He was like, "That guy's a wild man.
Mm.
You're gonna have a lot of good time." So I've heard stuff. So all good,
So
all
I,
good.
I
All good.
swear to God that donkey was dead when I found it.
You know, I've heard that before, and only half the time do I believe it because donkeys just don't die spontaneously, do they? It's got to
Well,
be
it
caused.
had it was on its last legs.
Well, arguably, the moment you're born, the legs you have are your last legs, unless you have some kind of a prosthetic attached. So I'm not
True.
sure I buy that argument either.
They
Oh
3D
wait,
print those now.
that's true. That's true. And speaking of which, for those that don't know, that's what Joe is most known for in the collector space. He makes stuff out of 3D printers. And so let's just hop right into that aspect of it. Obviously, 3D printing was something that you were already doing on some level. You don't just jump into this with no skill set and be able to do what you've done in a relatively short amount of time. So, how did you get started in the maker space? Let's start there.
So yeah, so I am notoriously cheap when it comes to buying anything consumer electronic wise. So about 7, 8 years ago, I bought on a deep discount a DaVinci 3D printer, which was a piece of garbage. And it was my
Hmm.
first 3D printer, and I thought I got a really good deal by spending only $600 on it.
Right.
So, and it was like the build space was like literally this big, and
Hmm.
it was hysterically awful. It actually used DRM chips in the filament containers. You had to only buy
Yes.
filament from them. You couldn't buy third party filament. Of course, I hacked that, but that's another story. Um, I drove that printer to the ground for like 2 years. And then I finally got like an Ender, another printer, then another printer. And my wife calls herself a 3D printer widow because I currently have like 9 printers.
Oh,
And,
is that all?
you know, that's all. That's not counting the 3 printers who've died over the past 3 years.
Oh,
Because just like that donkey, I use them and abuse them. And well, maybe I shouldn't have said that part out loud. But at the end of the day, I I want to go back in time to talk to young me and say, when you become an old, you're going to be able to you're going to be able to design things and then take a little card from your computer and go to another room and put that card in that machine, and within a day that thing you designed will be a thing. Like literally, like I designed this didn't exist before I created it and I made it. That is an astonishingly amazing thing. So yeah, the long story short, I was making like replica props from Space 1999 because at the time nobody was selling them, and I was really mostly printing stuff from Thingiverse that I really liked, and was like, ooh, that's cool, I'll print that. Um, and then this maker thing came into my life thanks to the benevolent force, which is Michael French. About 2.5 years ago, I was watching Retroblasting. I had been a subscriber for over 2 years at that point. And he had this guy, Rob, had created an upscaled Viper toy from Mattel.
mm-hmm.
And I was like, I literally, it was one of those, I mean, I remember when my children were born. And that I also remember that video, watching it live. And I could see just the joy in Michael's face. And I could see that this was something I could, like a switch just went off on my head. And I blame Rob and Michael, and credit them equally for that. Michael more than Rob. But it was that inspiration point that it was like, I can do this. We all at some point in our lives have imposter syndrome, and we go, well, I don't deserve my success, or I don't think I can do this, or I don't think I can do that. And I started going, well, what do I want to do first? And what I wanted to do first was like the Buck Rogers playset from Mego from like 1978. That's horrible. It's made out of polystyrene and it's falling. Any modern version of it falls apart. And I just started looking at photos from eBay auctions, and like knowing there's parallax when you print out a photo, I started adjusting for the parallax and building the models of that playset. And within like a week, I had a playset. And ironically enough, I went to Michael French's house to deliver, the first model I did for him. That I did that for him and me, to be honest. And I said, can I look at your original Buck Rogers Starfighter Command playset? And he said, sure. He brought it out. And I got my digital caliper out and I started measuring it. And I realized that I gotten like 95% close and accurate to the original without having access to it. And then I was like, okay, what next? And then I started doing more and more. And I'll pause there as we can continue on with the conversation later on that.
Sure. And I just want to call out, thank you, Slaughterhouse Zazel, for the super sticker. Much appreciated. There was lots of follow up on the donkey story in chat, apparently.
Okay,
This is one of my
well,
favorites. Donkey deeds done dirt cheap. I mean, sure, you'll have that from time to time. Logic Blaster saying that Michael's an amazing advocate for the maker movement. Absolutely. Probably one of, if not the most vocal and a purposeful voice, because he's not just saying, "Ooh, you can make stuff. It's great." He explains why, the why behind it, why it captures the imagination, where things can go, and how, for the first time, really, in the history of toys, it's in the hands of the consumer and the fans more so than any other time. And I think what you're doing really speaks to that. So let's, there's some people, a lot of people in chat I know for sure have seen this before, but we'd be remiss if, as we continue the conversation, without these showing on screen the Bespin playset. And before I show it, I have a small story that you probably know from having heard me say it a billion times. When I first started collecting toys a year ago, in earnest, I said I'm going to stay away from Star Wars. That's a deep rabbit hole to get into. And then I heard about this thing, and I said, okay, well, I can do a Bespin Cetrant collection, and I'll be all right. And that has been my motto for several months. And now I've kind of looking at Power of the Force a little bit more and said, it's affordable. I want more. But Bespin still being that centerpiece that I want to do. And this is one of the pictures of your gorgeous Bespin playset that you've created in tandem with input from Michael. So if you could kind of walk us through the impetus for this particular piece and what that process was
Absolutely.
like from your perspective.
Oh, sure. So I've written about this on my blog. By the way, my blog is josephdickerson.com, and there's lots of background on that. And, I write about design and Star Trek and geek stuff, but, I really have leaned in to talking about, stories of my life, especially this type of adventure I'm on. It really started with Joe Fest last year, 2021. I knew Michael was going to be there, and I was like, I have to go find him on the show floor, and basically tell him he inspired me. That he had gotten me started in this movement by highlighting all these fantastic works from people like Stan Solo, people like Rob, and many others that I can't even name. And I just wanted to show him some of the stuff I did. So I walked up to him and I said thank you, and I showed him my eBay shop and showed him some of the stuff. And I mean, I've leaned in. I've done Star Trek playsets. I've done $6 Million Man toys, which was great fun. Stuff that they either made and it's super rare. I've done Man from Uncle toy recreations, which was a particular itch that I wanted to scratch for my particular fandom. I've done a lot of stuff, and I showed him my stuff on my phone, and he's like, I've been looking for a guy who can do a scaled up version of the Bespin freeze chamber. I've talked to like 8 people, and I might be exaggerating the number, but he basically said, nobody will do it. Nobody has the courage to do it. And again, I'm paraphrasing because I'm an old, so my memory won't be.
To be fair, my recollection of his explanation of what led up to this is the exact same thing. People were shying away from it. They were like diving for cover, saying, "No, not me!" And it was very much that. And it was very
Yep.
clear from his tailing of the tale that you were the guy that was willing to step up. Why
Yeah,
was
and
that? What made you decide
well,
I'm in? I can do this.
so I actually have artifacts that I could share. I actually literally
Okay.
I have this very notebook. So this is the notebook that I had with me. And I always sketch. I take notes. I sketch, and I literally, I'm trying to find the exact sheet, but yeah, I literally started designing it in the hotel room with my son. And I can't find the sheet, but I went upstairs after spending way too much money on the Joe Fest floor, and I was like, maybe I could do this. So I sketched out the layout, and then I remembered I had it. I had the original micro collection freeze chamber in a box somewhere back in my home, and I realized I could take my digital caliper and do exactly what Rob did for the Mattel, Viper. I could scale it up, and I realized it's like, to do it right, you'd have to be 4x from that collection, because the figures are 1 inch and the 3 3/4 inch figures are almost 4 inch, so I have to do a 4x size. So I started sketching it out, and I went down and I said, I think I'm gonna do this. And he was, to be honest, I think he was okay, sure, whatever. He was a little, and I dutifully skeptical because he didn't know me from Adam. And I started opening up my tool, started designing parts, doing the general layout, and I started sending him screenshots. And he, within a couple of weeks, started realizing I was serious about this. This was something that I was going to invest time and energy in doing. And I think the big epiphany and the big breakthrough for me was trying to figure out how to make it something that you could play with, not just have a one-to-one scale replica. Because I think Michael's original intent was, I wanted to see this toy, which I still have on my shelf right back there. I wanted to see that toy big. And I was like, that's limiting. That there are more possibilities and opportunities here. And so I ended up designing a playset that had no floor, because in the micro collection playset, everything is floor bound. There's a floor on the toy, which means that you're locked into the configuration that is the toy. And I was like, no, we don't need a floor. We need support stands for the elevated pieces, but we don't need a floor. And by doing that, it opened up the whole idea. And I think the one time that I knew I had it, and I got it, was after I did the claw, and I sent Michael the detailed image of the prototype version of the claw that I printed. And he told me later that he screamed to Melinda to have her come down here. You got to see this. And at that point, once he relayed that to me, and Michael's, I love his communication style. His communication style in email is the same communication style on his show, which is lots of exclamation points when he's excited. The man is like a kid, literally a kid in a toy store. And I am just truly blessed to know him, and truly blessed to, I consider him a friend now. I don't know if he considers me a friend, but I think he does. But yeah, I delivered it. It was 110 hours of design time. When you add up all the print time, thankfully I had at the time 5 printers. It's 22 full days of print time to make that thing, if I only had one printer. And I was able to build the prototype and take it over to his house, because I live in Atlanta. He lives in Atlanta, so it was a hop, skip, and a jump. So yeah. And since then, I've done even more stuff that I'm really excited about. So, but yeah, that was the story about how that happened. And Michael, he's such a mensch. He talks about, I made a dream come true for him, and it warms my heart. And I've always said, if only one person enjoys what I do, besides me, I've succeeded. That's my goal. I want to make people happy, and that's why I do this.
And you certainly accomplished that, because as soon as that first video came out, and those of us that are patrons of his channel, we're looking at the progress. What? How is this? This is real? And then you see it, you see the video, and it's just like, and from what I understand, it's been iterated on since, because you're still working on Bespin World, so to speak, and there's going to be a follow up, and I don't want to spoil any of that. But
yes,
you do have several pieces already in place that you can view them on your eBay store, and certainly I would assume there's some more stuff in the blog as well.
Yeah, I've not really gone into the Bespin World stuff on the blog, but I have talked about the Gunstar, which I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Oh, we can go there, but before we do, let's call up some of the other things you've built.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I really, that is something. So we talked about classic toys I never had as a kid. So the first thing I never had as a kid was the Death Probe from $6 Million Man. And now that toy is like $2,000 if you can find it. So what I ended up doing was I And again, I have the pictures. I have the senator. I have the documents. I literally, this is the original stuff, and this is how I work. Just as a little show preview. So I took like an actual photo from the toy, and I started measuring it out and converting the measurements. And again, converting the measurements into millimeters. And like literally, I didn't have the toy. This is not my collection. I'm going to make it. So what I did was I created a replica of the toy. But what the toy in 1977, 78, it's way underscaled. It's like, you've got, again, I can show you this thing, that's a 12-inch figure, and that's the size of the Death Probe. It is nowhere near accurate to what was on the show. So I created the recreation. I said, I can make this better. So what I did was I took the basic forms and shapes from my recreation of the Kenner toy, and I made an accurate scaled Death Probe toy. I literally watched both episodes, Death Probe Part 2 and Death Probe, and I took screenshots. I even made sure that the claw mechanism that attaches to the door had the accurate detailing. And again, I'm doing this for me. If anybody likes it in addition to me, again, it makes me happy. But the turret rotates. You've got wheels. It comes together like a model kit, etc. So, and you just did a preview of something you weren't supposed to show there, but that's fine.
It's on your eBay
I
store,
know,
sir.
I know. It's fine. It's fine. No, yeah, that we could talk a little bit about that if you want to. But yeah, that's something that I really enjoy doing because you know my goal, my ambition now is to create toys that these toy companies never had the ambition to do, failed and they either didn't have the imagination or the budget. And again, I want to caveat all of this. I am not doing injection molds. I am not a Bobby Valla. I am doing stuff that they failed to do. Like Mego, never did an accurate Star Trek Bridge playset for the Star Trek the Motion Picture figures. And I went to Michael French's house and I looked at that horrible, horrible bridge playset that Mego made. And I even said, how can I mean, I was thinking, oh, I can recreate it just like I did with the Mego Buck Rogers Starfleet Command. I was like, no, I'm gonna fix it. And so I ended up making both the command section as well as a half wall for the bridge. And that's, of course, going back, jumping around,
That's the Buck Rogers.
that's the Buck Rogers, which is, again, no floor because I wanted to make sure it was modular. The original toy is vacuum molded and has a floor, which is dumb. So this way you have some modularity. And by the way, that's not my Starfighter. That's obviously, I think, Rob's.
Fair enough. I just want to bring up a comment that I think you'll appreciate. Jesse Hughes, Epic Badger, our head moderator, says that UX engineering is an awesome field and so important for product interaction, and especially website. I will enjoy reading this blog. And that kind of speaks to the level of detail that you're putting in here. And it's really something you just don't see in general, let alone in this space.
Mm.
People tend to try to find the shortest distance between viewpoints and call it good. That doesn't mean I think all people are inherently lazy. It's just they're looking for the most direct solution sometimes, which it's less work a lot of the time. Whereas you seem
Oh,
to be very keen on, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the way that it needs to be done. And if that takes more work, so be it. And that brings me to a less of a question and more of a, I'm kind of going to extrapolate something you said into to answer a question I was going to ask. if anyone's gone to the eBay store to look at some of these things, the prices are rather high. And the fact is, well, one, some of this stuff you can't get for for double the price that is out there because it doesn't exist. Number one. Number two, if it does exist, it's quadruple the price. Three, if you look at just the amount of time and detailed work, if you ask any designer of any discipline to do something for to do 30 design hours as an example, or 20 or 100 or 150, because it gets into that place sometimes. You need to recognize that people need to be paid for their work, and it isn't always going to be a bulk number that works because every project is different. And if he were to, well, I say he when I'm talking to the chat, but also if you were to just say, all right, here's my, just for one printing, here's how much design work went into this, and charge that for each piece, or to charge the kilowatt per hour for all of the electricity, or also tack on the material costs. Like you're still giving this stuff away at a relatively good price when you consider all of the factors that go into that. Not to mention the fact that these are artisan, more or less handmade pieces that should be treated as such financially, from my perspective. That's why, I'll admit the first time I saw it, I was like, "Whoa, sticker shock!" But then I thought about, like, you know what though, the guy made it. He didn't just pull down a file and print it for a couple days and call it good. You have put an nearly obscene amount of work into this stuff to the point where it cannot be overstated that this is a triumph of engineering and passion and design. All of these. So I thank you on behalf of the community for that. And speaking of thank yous, we've got a super sticker from Weird Fantastic Toy Adventures. That guy is 11 away from 500 subs. If you haven't subbed him, go sub to him, folks. And Will McLaughlin with the 4.99 super chat, no message, just Will being Will. Thank you so much.
Oh.
Jimmy Salzberg beat me to this one with a super chat. Tower of Darkness from Superpowers. That's something we all want desperately.
I have sketches, but
Get the fuck out! Really?
yeah, there's look there's three projects on my short list,
Okay.
and I can reveal them now, and that's not on my short list, by the way.
Fair enough.
But it's so Icarus, the spaceship from Planet of the Apes, as a
Okay.
playset. That one is a fairly straightforward design.
And is that going to be Mego sized, like big Mego sized, or
maybe
what scale are you?
Mego has done 8-inch Planet of the Apes figures that have just come out.
Right.
And I'm either go big or go home sometimes. So when I've got a sneak preview of the other project, literally right here, that I will share in a few minutes. But it's called the Tease. But yeah, Icarus is definitely on the short list. Blade Runner car as a toy playset. It's definitely on the short list. For Mego scale, for the 3 3/4 inch scale figures.
Okay.
Narcissus shuttle from the Alien movie, the original, as a playset. For 3 3/4 inch figures.
Nice.
That's on my short list. Now, when will I get to this? I don't know, but I've got that. That's the priority ones I really want to start working on after I finish my current giant monster project, which is what I will tease momentarily.
Okay. So before we do that, you did already mention the Gunstar, which many people know about. I have some pictures here. This is breathtakingly large. This thing is gigantic. And it has so many functional pieces, so much room for activities. Um, I was looking through these pictures earlier, and I was just like, bear in mind, folks, those are 3 3/4 inch figures. Look how big this thing is. It's over 3 feet, right?
Mm-hmm. It
It's
is,
insane.
yeah. Like I said, I go big or go home. And again,
Yeah.
I put myself in the mind. I do this stuff, and I try and find a happy space in my head where it's like, if I'm a Kenner designer, 83, 84, and I have
Hmm.
no limits, I can basically build the USS Flag as of a spaceship. What would I do? How would I design it? And again, I never go for accuracy. I'm sure people will look at this and go, well, actually, the detail and the fin section does not have all the. It has to be, there should be. I never go for accuracy. I go for play value. I want this thing to look like what a Kenner designer would have done in 82, 83 if he had the means and the corporate approval. That's where I start and that's where I finish. And if I get to the point where I can look at something, I go, yep, that's what it would have been. I'm happy.
So, with that in mind, if we're looking at the Gunstar here, and maybe I'm looking at it wrong. You do have the cockpits, and of course the one for the gunner has the dome so it can spin, which is accurate. Um, but I'm noticing on the cockpit fuselage, because you said it's detachable, it has a little engine for extra fun play. And this is a question slash request because on the and maybe I don't see it, or maybe I'm just being nitpicky because I can be. Now, before I say any of this is a wonderful achievement, and as is would be welcome in any collector's space, especially mine, because I'm a big Last Starfighter fan. Okay, now my brain goes to the bottom of that cockpit, and I go, "Is
Mm-hmm.
there a way that we could do that bulbous underneath and just have it a clip-on thing as optional, so that it
Mm.
mimics that curve underneath?" Because and that's the thing. I had to like. I was looking through these pictures, going, "Okay, what can I bust his hump about with this?" Since since he brought it up, because look at all the details, chat. I mean, you've got the ladder that goes underneath, like in the film, but there's different places you can put that ladder that makes sense within the confines of play. And answering my own question too. If you look at that stand that keeps it upright without falling over, that's probably why that doesn't exist. If I had to venture a guess, am I close?
Yeah, yeah. That there's. I just made a note of it. I will look at it, and I'll
Oh,
have to.
yeah.
So there is a little. Yeah, the bulbulous part is there, and it's probably not obvious in the pictures. Um, but making it detachable would probably be a smart idea. So I'll noodle on it. Um,
Cool.
so and by the way, the cockpits. If you go back to the other shot, those cockpits, the ones that are those right there, that's the beta version of the cockpits. I've revised them, and the newer cockpits are much more elegant. They look
Okay.
a lot better. So I don't have a pic I can show you, but they're a lot better.
Fair enough. And again, we're looking at, and it says so right on the eBay listings, for example, that all of these are initial prototypes, that the finals are always iterated on. But I got to call out, just like Chad is, working Death Blossom. Are you kidding me? And you also have the targeting drone that they put out there, which is great. Um, just oh, how long? So how long did this one take?
This one, print wise, took actually less than the freeze chamber because of an amazing company called Anycubic and an amazing company called Ultimaker. Anycubic made a brand new version of their printer that was a 400 by 400 by 400 millimeter print size. So huge chunks of that piece was able to print at once. One
Okay.
wing printed in one part. And the other thing is Ultimaker, which makes Cura, which
Hmm.
is the splicing and tool I use to prepare pieces for print. Updated their software about a year ago and created this new mode called Lightning. And with Lightning mode, you basically don't have a solid print. You're able to print pieces that are effectively mostly hollow. And by doing that, you save tremendous amount of time on printing, tremendous amount of time on materials, and you actually can thicken the walls of the object you're printing to give it the strength it would normally have if it was a solid interior. So if you look at that model, that's not that heavy. It's actually fairly light, and you can actually run around in your house going zap and pow with that toy.
That's beautiful.
And I'm
See,
not
and here,
saying I've done it. I'm saying you can do
you know, I feel like you'd have to test that before you can make that claim. I'm not I'm not sure I believe you when you say you haven't done that. Because when you were talking about the lightning feature, immediately my brain went to, oh, it's gonna have like a partially like honeycomb or less solid thing. Because if it's gonna print faster, there's no way to shortcut that. I was thinking, oh, that means he could do the prototypes faster, therefore get to the end faster. No, you're talking about actual structural integrity and faster printing, which still helps with your prototypes and everything else. And I would imagine lowers production cost for a piece as well because you're using less filament, less time, etc.
it. Yep. Yeah. And part of the reason part of the reason why I do charge a premium is like you mentioned, and I don't even consider it a premium. I charge what I charge. And based on market forces, based on my available time, sometimes I lower the price on stuff. Sometimes I raise the price on stuff. Um, this is still not my day job, and I don't think it ever will be my day job. But if I'm between jobs and out of work, sometimes I put extra models on eBay and I drop the price just to get cash flow coming. At the end of the day, this is still a labor of love. And
Hmm.
so, you mentioned that it is an artisan product. Um, I want to make sure that I do have some level of compensation for my time because
Sure.
prints fail, printers break down. I have to maintain a print farm, etc. And at the
Right.
end of the day, I do want to make the best possible version of these things. And I've said this before, but I've sold some versions of the freeze chamber where one of the person who bought it was not happy with the quality of the print, and I said, send it back and I'll refund your money. And there was a little bit of debate. I actually offered to reprint parts that he didn't find acceptable because there's always blemishes in print. But
Sure.
it finally got to the point where I said, look, just send it back. I will refund your money, and I always do that. If anyone has any problem with anything I sell, they can get their money back within the 30 days or whatever the term is. Because I want the same type of terms for such stuff I buy. That's what you do. That's how you want to live and treat people the way you want to be treated. I think there's something in this book about that. I can't remember the book, but you probably know.
I mean, yeah, I may have read it when I was younger. I don't know, but
Mm,
I have heard such things. And but at the end of the day, like when you're a consumer doing this for other consumers, and you become that middle ground producer where you don't have your foot dipped into the corporate realm, nor do you have the resources of that realm. There is that community aspect of what you're doing, where you're doing this to make people happy, and if they're not happy, you don't want to be a part of the transaction at that point. It's like if you're not
yeah,
happy, I don't. This is okay. Like I get it. And good luck when in other toy related endeavors getting that kind of a response from someone who made something. I made a video
yeah,
just today about the fact that I purchased a new figure secondhand And I was like, oh, cool. And I got him and I did what I wanted to do on the custom. And I went to pose him and his knee snapped. This is a less than a year old figure in a toy line that generally has pretty good quality control. So I
Mm.
was shocked more than anything else, more shocked than disappointed. But it made me think about like, oh, it could have been because it was in the hot truck for all this time, and then it went into the air conditioner, and that's going to mess with the plastic and this and that, and why didn't I boil it? And that. So you go through all those things, and even though it broke within seconds, it's not the seller's fault. He just says, "Here's the product that was made. I'm going to resell it to you." I'm not going to go after him for that. I certainly can't go to Mattel, even if I did pull it out of the package. They don't have warranty on these things. They're not gonna be
Yeah,
like, "Oh, your Cronus broke. We don't like a figure anyway. You can." And it's so when you're doing something that does take that much time and that much love and that much care, and you are putting those kinds of price tags on it, where it's a lot of money. It's a fair amount of money for what you're doing. To turn around and say, no, you can have that back. You can have your couple $100 back, and if you're not happy, I totally get it. Oh, Bill, no. No, no, no. It was that Cronus figure that I bought to do the custom. His knee snapped.
mm.
Snoo! Right in half. Not fun. Not fun. But Bill's making a very good point. Is you have to understand the problems of 3D printing when you buy these sorts of things. This is not the same as injection molding. It's not the same as other methods that you're going to have. There's going to be sometimes different edges, and you're going to have some splintering and certain textures. And yes, there are ways to finish the product to get it to be a bit smoother and to paint it and do all the things you might want to do to make it um, quote complete unquote. But that's not what you're paying for when you buy something from a person like
Yeah,
yourself. You're paying for you need the model kit in essence. You need a play worthy model kit, and then from what you do from there is the finishing touches, right? And because if you were to take the time to maybe use acetate or something to smooth edges and do all these things and make it super polished and everything else, guess what? That's only going to drive the price up anyway.
yeah,
Nor does and it certainly doesn't guarantee that what you would do to clean up a project is what the next person would do. Maybe I like those rough edges and I want to keep some of them because I like the way they look under a sheen or something like that. You can't make assumptions about that. So you coming from a place of it being a play rugged model kit, I think is the most accurate description one could have of these because they do require more more work on the part of the recipient as well.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
and exactly. Michael has said it very accurately, where it's like it's part it's part finished toy, part model kit, and
mhm,
I try and prepare all of these things so that it's obvious and easy for people to create. You know, I spent more time trying to figure out how certain parts come together on like the Gunstar than I
mhm.
actually did modeling the basic shapes because I want someone to be able to put it together and go ta-da, and not I mean like tabs and slots and all that type of stuff and tolerances. It's like I wake up screaming and sweating over 3D printer tolerances because what is a 1 millimeter tolerance on one printer is a 1.5 millimeter tolerance on another printer. And you just have to, I mean, I'm like the 3D printer whisperer sometimes where it's like, okay, okay, you're going to do great. You're going to do great. I believe in you. And especially, like I had that large format printer that I talked about, it just stopped working. Just, it would start a print and just stopped. No warning, no error message, nothing. I tried to debug it. I pulled it apart. I put it back together. I got parts from the manufacturer. Then I realized it wasn't getting enough wattage because it was a larger format printer. I had it plugged into a universal power supply
Yep,
in case
yep.
the power went out. Wasn't getting enough wattage. Plugged it into the wall. Still giving me some weirdness, but it solved the problem. They don't teach that. There's
No,
no there's no classes for 3D printing where it's like, well, this printer, you have to make sure you do this. And it's like, I mean, I've had printers literally explode on me, like parts flying. And it's like you don't you don't you don't think that's going to happen when you buy a piece of consumer electronics to do things with. But I mean, I'm pushing these things to the limit sometimes, and
And
these poor printers are screaming at me. It's like, no.
I think that that's true with anyone who is by nature a tinkerer. You're going to take something and push it as far as it can go until it breaks. I'm that way when it comes to software customization and get things exactly the way that I like them. I'm that way with sound design, customization, and things like that. It won't always show in the products that I make in terms of video and things like that, but for myself, I'm very like, can I do this? Can I make it do this? And I'll repurpose software for things it's not supposed to do and combine things in a way that they're just not designed to do. We were talking about Radio Shack earlier before we came on. That's the kind of thing that I do. Now, with 3D printing, I remember when it starting to pick up legs about 6, 7 years ago. It was starting to become something that was like, this isn't going away. It's still not truly consumer grade yet, like plug and play, but it's starting to get there. And then a few years ago, I'm like, okay. And then I'm hearing, and the longer we go on, like any other piece of emerging technology, it is getting closer to that plug and play to a certain degree. But I feel like if we ever get to a place where 3D printers are plug and play, we're going to get to that inkjet printer problem where you do have the chips for the materials, and there's certain things you're going to lose certain amounts of fidelity, certain amounts of um, ability to tinker. So I think there's always going to be space for that with 3D printing. But with that context in place, how long do you think it is before 3D printing is something that the average person for average use will be able to get a 3D printer and just use it out of the box? For again, bearing in mind that they're not a Joe Dickerson.
Yeah. Uh, so I'm a software designer, and you talked about the people look for the path of least resistance, and I design software, and I think about that all the time, where it's like, what are the people trying to do with the software my team is putting together? And when you look at the workflow you have to do in 3D printing, if you cut out a third of the minutia, the administration of the machines, it's still a pretty heavy bearing cost for a typical person. Um, I would say there have been consumers and companies trying to create consumer grade 3D printers for just Joe Sixpack. Um, until there is like a here's the product. I'm going to do some envisioning with you. Here's the product that would be the perfect product for a Joe Sixpack. You basically have a 3D printer with a screen, it's color, it's connected to Thingiverse. They could search with their phone for a thing to print, and then they could also browse on the printer. And they can find a thing, they could hit print on their phone or print on the device, and it will start printing, and it will print within 1 day. The 1 day mark is the key. It has to be within a day.
Okay.
Anything beyond a day, you start to have potential failure cascades happening, because you start to have power issues, you start to have filament issues. It has to be enough filament in whatever, and the filament has to be like an inkjet cartridge, just like you spoke to. It's literally a cart designed for that machine, where once it's out, it tells you, you order another one, you just plug it in. There's no threading a filament to a filament feed. You literally just pull and push. When a company makes something that is that easy to use and that turnkey, then Joe Sixpack will be doing 3D printing.
Yep.
But until you reduce the bearing cost of printing to the bare minimum of, I like that, I want to have that in physical form, press a button, walk away, it will never get into that. And I look at computers that way. Computers got to
Right.
the point where originally computers were you had to type in commands, then they created a GUI, then it became simpler and apps were more prevalent. So computers went from giant mainframes to something that a child can pick up and use. So it has to be that type of evolution. It has to be a obvious, simple, one button type of thing for any 3D printer to get into the mainstream way computers have.
And for reference to your point, Joe, when we talk about the home PC, we're talking about over 30 years of development from the mid 70s to the early 2000s where, people might argue my point, but it wasn't until about 2003, 2004 where computers were really relatively simple and were reliably powerful for most stuff. Even maybe as far as 2010, because even then your consumer grade computer couldn't do shit. Whereas now you can buy one off the shelf and it will do most games somewhat okay. Now, for the person who's constantly trying to power four 4K monitors and have this thing go across there and have it, do their homework and their taxes and maybe do a little bit of under the table stuff too. Like that takes money. Um, and it's the same thing with, even though it's come leaps and bounds, the virtual reality stuff where I was an early adopter. I got the first Vive, and there's a lot you have to do. You have to have a
Mm-hmm.
basic knowledge of software and spatial awareness and how light works and things like that just to get those things to work reliably. And you had people investing thousands of dollars and hundreds of square feet of space to make these things do things they weren't really designed to do out of the box. Whereas now you have some stuff that is mostly plug and play, but we're at least another 5 years of iteration on that stuff. But that's only because we have the biggest companies in gaming behind it. 3D printing is its own market, and there isn't. And you can correct me on this if you think I'm incorrect. Obviously, there isn't a company that's like trying that at this point. They're trying to make it easier for the people already using it, and they're lowering the barrier of entry. You know, just by little tiny tick marks. They're just trying
Yeah.
to do the best they can, and there's not because whether it's a maybe it's a lack of vision, maybe it's a lack of resources, or a little bit of both. Where until the average consumer can start to see the usage for this, like that day to day use, because right now it is regarded as a hobby thing that you can make toys with and make extra parts for and stuff like that. But there's a lot you can do day
Mm-hmm.
to day with stuff. Like for example, with that toy that broke today, um, I because of the nature of those pieces, because of the way they're designed, I could probably print one if I had the file for it. Couple pieces, snap them together, glue them together, works exactly the same way. Little bit of paint, done. And it wouldn't cost near as much time as it takes to ship something from somewhere else that's already made. That's the allure, is that something is there near instantaneously.
Mm.
The other day I was looking at these hangers for a controller to put on your desk, and I thought, man, if I had a 3D printer, that'd be really easy to do. You just take the thickness of your desk, then you lower the thickness of the clamp by, let's say, half a millimeter or so, and then you put some thin pieces of neoprene on either side of it. When it's printed glued, you got your clamp. Because I was thinking about the old Sky Commanders clamps that came with those toys, where they just had the rubber and the
Mm-hmm.
plastic, and those worked gangbusters. So I thought all I have to do is create a clamp, put some neoprene on it, and then snap in the hanger, and that's done. I could have that in a couple hours. But I don't have
Yeah.
a 3D printer, and I don't know how to design the shit. But but there's people out there that do that sort of a thing, and I think beyond the technology having an ease of use access, it also feels like we have to culturally lead people back to being willing to learn a little bit. My background is technical support and computers support and things like that, where you are constantly bombarded with the refrain that I don't want to learn how to do this. I want it to just work.
Yeah.
And I think that's a cultural problem. It's not a generational problem because people of all ages do that shit. And it's frustrating for those of us that love to do the tinkering and all the things to then go like, check this out, you could do this. Like, no, it's too much work, man. Do you, as a software designer and also someone who's doing this, is that something that you think about too when you're creating, as far as because I know in the software that's something you have to do to be good at your job. But do you think about the cultural aspect of that at all? Does that impact you?
Uh, I always think about the people. And as a designer, I think about the usage and the people first and foremost.
Hmm.
And I mean, one of the things I did, and I worked for a little company called Microsoft. You might have heard of it. It's a startup company based out of the West Coast. When I was at Microsoft, one of the things I actually stood up, I helped stand up, was a method of research around inclusivity, people who are differently able than me. And so, and it's not just, it doesn't have to be a permanent situation, it could be a temporary or transient situation. And when you design for different people and different needs and different perspectives, it makes you be thoughtful about the use of what you're doing. And, I always come from a place when it comes to either software or product design. And I don't want to call it product design, but 3D modeling, the stuff I do. I always want to come from a place of giving joy, those unexpected moments of pleasure, where it's like, oh, I want to give people the stuff that I love having in my own life. And that's the empathy point and the empathy place I come from. I want to have that 3D printer I just described to you moments ago, because I want to be able to show my wife, you could do this. And she has that sense of accomplishment and joy at being able to do stuff that has taken me a lot more laborious process to do. And that's kind of like the North Star I go for. Everything I do is to just give me pleasure, but also to give pleasure to someone else. Even if it's just a software that my team is designing, I want people to not be frustrated with what I create or do. I want people to take joy in that thing. And that's just my I guess my manifesto.
Fair enough. And speaking of that joy, and I'll use the Gunstar as an example because this was something you went after. Because I feel like the Bespin, the freeze chamber, that was a spark of inspiration, and you were going after a target more or less for someone else initially, and then the process became its own thing. Gunstar being something you said, I want that, and I want that now. What was it like when you completed it and held it in your hands for the first time?
It was it was very satisfying. And it was very much, I mean, I have three sons. It wasn't like having a baby boy in my arms, but it was in the same general landscape. It was, again, as I said earlier in the stream, if I could go back in time and tell younger me, you're going to be able to create something. You can sketch it out on a piece of paper. You're going to be able to
Mhm.
get an application on a computer, design it, model it, send it on a file, and a day or three later, you'll have this thing in your hand. And I did this like escape pod because I really hated the Land of the Jawas escape pod that Kenner did. And I wanted a more accurate version of the toy. And it's not accurate to the movie, but in my head, it's more accurate than what Kenner did. And that to me is why I do this. I take pleasure in the very notion of being able to go from zero to this in a span of days, and that's kind of what drives me. Same reason I write, same reason I I create, and same reason I go and explore as many new experiences as possible.
And we're getting lots of great feedback from chat. I want to pull up something that Will said. He says that, Joe, what you just said is amazing, even more amazing than your immense talent and creativity. And I think that's true of just about every answer you've given, quite honestly. Um, this is something where it's one thing to create something for others in the way that you've done that. Okay, that's one thing. Plenty of people do that, right? But to do it with the goal to bring joy to someone else, to share in that positivity, and for that to show up on your face as you're talking about it, that means a lot. I mean, that's why we shower you with so much affection, my friend. It's because we understand that that's where this comes from. There are a lot of people that do similar things to what you do, um, and I won't name any names because we're going to be polite. But they
Yes,
recently put a project that was very simple in concept and relatively simple in design, which was the kind of the genius of it to a certain degree. So, like, why can't you just make that? And he's like, you know what? I'll give it a try. He iterated for a couple weeks, made it, and then someone said, well, I have this accessory that goes with this thing. Could you make a version of this to accommodate that accessory so I could have this and enjoy it too? His immediate answer was a deadpan, no, I don't like that thing. No. And, I'm like, he's created this with the purpose of for the purpose of selling it. He made one for himself and then said, well, I can make some money off this, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Free enterprise. I support it. It's a thing. But if you are creating a customer base, like what level of hubris to just say, I won't even try because I wouldn't want that. Therefore, your need and your want is irrelevant. And the by contrast, I was busting your balls about the bottom of the Gunstar, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to have a removable thing. And then you're like, no, I'll look into that. That was your immediate thought. And I was like, well, this is no this other person. So it's you are very humble, and that's part of your humanity, and I appreciate that about you. But know that the affection that is showered upon you comes from a genuine place because we feel that what you create is very genuine. So we thank you for that because it would be easy for you to make this stuff and keep it to yourself. You chose not to do that, and I thank you.
well, thank you for that. And here's the ironic part. I don't really have a freeze chamber. I've sold every one I make, and same for the Gunstar. I don't have one because if it's choice between getting it to someone who wants to, like that Futurama meme, shop and take my money, I'm gonna, because they're putting, their cash on the line and they really want that thing, and that's the whole point of it. I don't do this just for me. I do this to give. I mean, just the fact that like a museum in New Jersey, an art museum bought one of my freeze chambers. They're just the idea that it might actually be in a museum somewhere is just kind of cool and kind of gobsmacking. And I really appreciate just being appreciated. I mean, that's the most important thing in the world. Is you know, I just I'm very happy at any gratitude that's shown me, and thank you for that comment because you're a mensch like Michael French. You're such a mensch.
Uh, no, no, I wouldn't even put myself in the same county of creatorship that he is. But and this is going to show you that that's true because I'm with Will. You teased an item that's right next to you. We haven't forgotten. You ready to show this thing
Yeah,
off?
yeah, I think so. So can I? I don't know if you want to let me share an image, but I can
Yeah,
share an image. All right.
sure.
Let me open the file, and I'll. this StreamYard. So let me find it, and I'll share this image to give you a sense of what that thing is. And this is going to be new to people who are not on the Retroblasting Patreon. So I'm going to share screen. All right, I'm going to select a window. Okay. So
All
can
right.
you see
I
this?
can. I'm already smiling, Joe.
All right.
All right, folks, here we go.
All right. Way back in 1983, Kenner was going to do a Blockade Runner playset. Now, this is a picture of the prototype of the Blockade Runner playset. As you will notice, it is a little out of scale with the actual ship in the movie. In fact, it's way out of scale.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a cockpit where you've got one pilot that could fit in. You've got a little radar dish that can open up and a figure can be there. And what ended up happening was I was just looking at this and I was going, they really need to make this better. And it's one of those things where I was like, I could do this. So I started designing the basic shapes to make a recreation of this unproduced toy. And I was like, no, it's too small. It's not going to work. It's not going to work at all. It has to be bigger. It has to be much, much, much bigger. So I've already done the basic shapes, and I printed effectively 2/3 of my version of this toy, the Blockade. If you want to go ahead and take that image off, I can show you the work in progress.
Okay.
And I'm going to have to lift my knees in this one. So just
Okay.
So
yeah.
this is most of my version of the Blockade Runner.
Holy hell.
Now, just to let you know, the bridge will go here.
Uh-huh.
And in case you want to know the scale, there's Darth.
That's
and I'll share a little bit of details. There is the detail.
Uh-huh.
So I am again trying to make this accurate to what Kenner would do. And oh god, my back. So there's some of the Kenner crackle, as Jason Anderson would say.
Mm-hmm.
And so also one thing I did. So I made the floor the same pattern as the floor inside of the Millennium Falcon Kenner toy.
Nice.
And let's see, I think I dropped a piece. So, and of course I've got a tiny gun. And I have some more. Let me put this down. So,
Sure.
So that is the current project I'm working on. And the bulk of my time is dedicated to adding all the Kenner crackle to the last section. And let me show you one more image. Let me find this. All right, so this is all right. So I'll go ahead and share. So if you want to go ahead and share that. So this is the basic forms. It's an earlier version. So what I've done is the rear portion of the toy, the roof comes off. and you have the hallway, and there's the door that Darth Vader came in. You have removable walls that I'm already designed, and you can just put in. And then in the back part is the area where Princess Leia gave
Get the
plans.
hell out. This is so cool.
So, and I think there's a little bit more detail I've added. Let me just show you. So this is the section that you saw, but this is kind of, so that is the level of detail that I've been working on and adding to
That's
effort in all this is that level of detail, the Kenner crackle that I have focused on doing. So yeah, that in a nutshell is what I'm working on right now, and I'm close to finishing.
so. In the interest of not being the lone voice of "Holy cow," I want to just bring up some comments just to give you some framework on how much you have changed lives already. Bill Wifta says, "No, he can't have made this to scale." Giraffe's like, "What have you done? What have you done?" And then when you were picking up the cruiser, beep beep beep, choke back up. Rolo going, "No way!" And I could see his face because I can show him a produced toy he's seen pictures of, but if I show it to him in person that he hasn't seen before, that he gets excited. He's very much like Michael, like yourself, hopefully like me, where you see something for the first time in person and you just blow up. So I can see his face. Tim Hayes says, "That's a big sucker." And anonymous dude says, "Oh my gosh, his mind's blown." Will is saying, "Holy smokes." Bill is saying, "Oh my god." Bill, nice. Two You're a Madman's in a row from Bjorn and Will. Jesse Hughes with an excellent point.
Yep.
Just like Thor's hammer, only the worthy may hold it. It's gigantic. Look at that thing.
So I want to add a couple of things. So here's the thing. So again, this is all Michael French's fault because he did a video on the Star Destroyer playset. By the way, that's also on my short list to do a bridge for the Star Destroyer. But I actually have modeled some of the Star Destroyer detail into this. So literally, if you look, this is like the top of the Star Destroyer toy.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was adding the detail, I was like, that Star Destroyer toy is horrible. But some of the detail that they put on that toy that Kenner did is really cool. So I took screenshots of his review and I actually molded the detail into this. So there's a little piece of Kenner history in this forever. So yeah.
That's awesome. Because you're not just because you're not just emulating necessarily, you're thinking as a fan. You're saying, okay, well, I can take this thing that
Yeah.
existed that maybe the design that they had, the overall design didn't work, but the detail work was so good. Let me integrate that. And it saves you time and also
Yep.
gives some bigger authenticity to the idea that this is a Kenner produced toy. Um, as soon as you pulled out that thing, I said, that top's got to come off, and there's going to be the hallway. But then you showed the actual piece with the R2D2 and the Princess Leia in the back, and I know that they did like these mini dioramas in Power of the Force 2, where you have some of that stuff working. And my brain, as I've been looking at those sets and those figures, I was like, well, how can I make a diorama that like speaks to those things and creates a space? And I was just thinking about those particular pieces not 3 days ago. I not Chad, I didn't know
Yeah.
he's gonna pull the Blockade Runner out in front of me. Like that, huh? Because I'm on the Patreon and I didn't know about this. I don't recall seeing pictures of this. Maybe it was mentioned in passing in text and I just didn't read it. Whoo, mama. And a couple people in chat are like, we need to get this guy a Kickstarter. I'm like, I wouldn't disagree with that. Where that would be something.
So Yeah, here's the thing. I'm not a multi-billion-dollar company who needs a Kickstarter.
Mm-mm.
I'm just a guy from Georgia who loves what I'm doing, and I don't need people to give me money. I want people to buy what I create. That the price for is reasonable. I'll take your money and I'll give you something I hope will bring you joy. But I don't need to beg for money to do what I love doing. And again,
Absolutely.
that is the power of love. And I am Huey Lewis. No, no. I mean,
Leave it.
at the end of the day, I'm one of those weird people who don't actually watch a lot of content. And I do my 8 to 10 hours, and I create stuff, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what I take pleasure in. I get in flow, and I do my thing, and it just makes me happy. And I hope to be doing this as long as William Shatner is doing what he's doing, which is 91, and he's still doing stuff. That's my
Absolutely.
life goal, is to be as much like William Shatner as possible. Only, not overacting.
Well,
Spock.
yes. And, it's interesting because you're a big Shatner guy. I'm a big Nimoy guy myself. Um, like, I kid you not, when I have trouble sleeping, I put on a Leonard Nimoy audiobook to fall asleep to his voice because it relaxes me, brings me back to childhood. So it's interesting. It's just an interesting dichotomy to me. We've got some other books. Bounty Hunter lineup playset would be epic. So if you are working on the bridge of a Star Destroyer, well, there's your playset right there, Giraffe. Like that's exactly what that would be. It's a perfect place to do that. Star Destroyer bridge, pretty sweet. Yep, light up diorama. Yeah, that's on the way at some point. I hope for Tower of Darkness first because I'm the superpowers guy in these parts, and Bill Wifta is also a big superpowers guy. Um, that would be. I could not put a price on what having that would mean to me because that is the playset that got away from my childhood. I saw the teaser for it, and even though I was not in on Series 3 at all for Superpowers, that playset would have brought me back. And
Mm,
they abandoned the line too quickly. And it's something that you've got a Hall of Justice, you got to have the other, you know.
yeah.
And I'm just going to plant this seed because if you are going to be doing this until you're in your 90s and beyond, there's plenty of time to create. Someone's going to put another little seed in your mind because this should have
Yeah.
existed too. Legion of Doom headquarters from Super Friends.
Yeah.
Because all you need is the shape, and you need like maybe a port for like a ship or something, and then the inside is just a board meeting table. It's that you know.
Yeah, it's like, and I've seen enough of those corporate boardrooms. I could pretty easily recreate them in 3D form. I don't think that'll be a challenge when it comes to my design skills. Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, and I've had this conversation with Michael about Bespin World, and maybe we could touch on that a bit.
Sure.
Um, I have three parts of Bespin World, which is the freeze chamber,
Hmm.
the control room.
Hmm.
I want six. So my goal is to make Michael French buy a really big table and have a circular diorama where it tells the story of the movie. You have a
Hmm.
landing, beautiful ornate hallway. The that's the second. Third part at the dining hall is it, and then you have the torture chamber next to it. So literally, like, and there's the prototype of the gantry,
Hmm.
which that was a joy to create. That was after I got my mojo going and I knew exactly where I was going with the designs. And again, toyific. That's my focus. Is trying to make something that was as close to what Kenner would have done, if they had the vision or the courage to make these toys. It's still, like Michael has said, it boggles my mind that they did 4 Hoth playsets and they did nothing for Bespin, and that's where the major things in the movie happened.
Yeah,
It's
the
just, I guess
majority
they
of
had
the film, in fact.
I guess they had an excess of white plastic they had to burn off in their warehouse.
Apparently. Now, I suppose that the thought process at that point is we're making a probe droid. We've made the Tauntauns, we've made the AT-AT and the AT-ST. So they want playsets that interact with the toys they're also making. Whereas with a Bespin playset, at least from the theory of, well, we only have so much money for tooling. Like you always hear that crap.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what is the cross sell for a Bespin playset? Well, the Cloud Car and an X-wing and a Millennium Falcon and a Slave One. And I'm like, did they not have that conversation? Because that's exactly that conversation in my head is as soon as I knew this thing was coming, I said, well, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this, and I need the figures to populate and everything. So even my best laid argument as to what they were thinking in terms of cross sell falls flat because the cross sell is way higher for a Bespin
Mm-hmm.
playset. You need all the ships to interact. And I also like one of the things because when I first saw the gantry, when Michael showed that off, I said, well, I know exactly what I want to do. I want to get like a PVC pipe that's cut to a certain height underneath there, and I want to print out on like some vinyl sticker all like the whole shaft area and make it forced perspective cardboard piece at the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
so you've got the shaft. Like that is something where you will need to build, not you, but a person who has this. You really should get some kind of purpose built table to house the whole thing and do up the whole area and make it a centerpiece of a room. That's the kind of thing that you would need. I foresee somebody finishing their 2-car garage and just having it showcase all these amazing Star Wars pieces that they're creating because the scale is that big. Like, this although you could do this with your Blockade runner and certainly with the Gunstar, these are not the kind of toys that you just hang from the ceiling. They beg to be played with. They beg to be taken apart and put back together and to do all these things. So not only have you captured imagination with this stuff, you have inspired that much more of it, which I think that's the secret sauce to toy making, my friend. I think that's what it is.
Well,
And
absolutely. And that's the thing, and Michael French and I both share a great love for Star Trek, not just, when I've seen Michael excited twice, really excited in my life. The first time was when I arrived with the freeze chamber, and you could see, like, and I was saying, well, this part is kind of, it doesn't, there's some issues with the print and you need to sand this. And he's like, this is, he had this face of beatic joy. And I was like, that's the first time I saw that, that expression. Second time I saw him was with the Playmobil Enterprise playset when before I opened mine, because I ordered one immediately. Just extremely happy with the play value of that. And just, he said, putting this together was the most, and you saw in his Enterprise video on the Playmobil Enterprise, he's exactly right. I mean, the action of creating and building a thing, like building a really good model kit, is exactly what Playmobil nails. And Playmobil, in my opinion, is like the best company for toys out there. Full stop. I mean, I don't buy Hasbro stuff. I don't buy Mattel stuff. I buy Playmobil stuff. That's the only thing I really collect right now.
Which is awesome. There is a comment from chat, and I've been noticing this too, that your audio is cutting out a little bit, probably due to your connection.
Okay.
So if you could
Yeah.
stop sharing the screen, that'll probably lower the bandwidth. That'll probably
Oh,
make
okay.
it work
Sorry
for you.
about that.
No,
Okay.
there's not a mistake. It's just you only have so much bandwidth on your upload, and the upstream is like, okay, because to your computer it's sharing the screen constantly, even if I don't have it on screen. So that
Got
should
it.
fix it. And if it persists, I'll let you know. But everything's fine. But I agree.
Okay.
In as much as you have to have the imagination. You have to want that joy to have the results that you have. Um, just saying I'm going to make one to scale, many other creators would do that, but it wouldn't elicit. It would elicit shock. It'd be, oh, that's cool, but just to look at that, basic shell of the blockade runner by itself is like, oh, but where you get into like the jaw hurting joy. I don't know if you noticed, but the entire time you were revealing this, I was locked in a permanent smile, and it just blew my mind. Um, that's where you get that in those level of detail and the idea of like it looks like something that is just right out of our childhood, the things we should have had but did not have. um just amazing, just breathtaking. um just knowing it exists, let alone there's a possibility of having it in my hands, like just knowing it exists is a reward in and of itself, Joe. So
Well, and well, thank you. I mean, the point is, I've never. So, I'll tell a quick story. About 12 years ago, um, I was working designing software for a company that sold software for banks, and I got a call from my boss at like Friday afternoon. I was in Atlanta, he's in Portland, and he asked me, "Do you have a passport?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, we have an opportunity for with a company in Australia, and Amy, who was my peer, who is a very beautiful brunette, is on vacation, so she can't go, and we need a designer to do a presentation for this bank." So of course they call the fat bald guy because the beautiful brunette's not available. So I said, well, and I had a moment of decision, and I at the time in my life had barely flown, had never traveled outside of the country. I was not a person who lived in with a full heart. I was a person who was playing it safe a lot of the time.
Mhm.
So he said, "Can you get a passport?" And at that moment of decision, I was like, "Yes." So the knock-on effect of that leap was I ended up going to Australia. I ended up living in Australia for 2 years. I ended up, because of the work I did in Australia, getting a job with Microsoft, a Fortune 2 company. I ended up learning skills and traveling the world. Never thought possible. Never even in my wildest dreams would I think I could have achieved what I did thanks to that leap of faith. And
Mhm.
ever since then, whenever an idea crosses my mind that I think I can do, I put it on the list to do. I am never going to live in fear again. I'm going to live my life to the fullest and create as much as I can while I'm still walking on this earth.
There you go, guys. I mean, how do you follow that up? And normally, I like I'm very attuned to valuing one's time, because right now is time you could be creating something, and I'm um, very understanding. And of course, because you're making stuff that benefits all of us, I don't want to take up too much of it. But I think that because this is an opportunity that hasn't existed for the people in chat before, if you're amenable, I'd like to allow at least 15 minutes for questions from chat.
Absolutely. As long as they're not questions about um, horses or donkeys.
Fair
because
enough.
I don't want to talk about the donkey situation anymore.
Correct. We let sleeping donkeys lie, so to speak. Um,
Mm.
so here's a question from Chad. Almost do 1, 2, 3. Asks if there's time. Gotta say, forgive me. I must encourage intellect and talent. Absolutely. This man could design a city or perhaps a ship to Mars. Would Mr. Dickerson ever consider that? Please keep creating.
So I look, I am very good at a lot of things. I am not a mechanical engineer. I am not an electrician. My oldest son is an electrician. He just turned out. God bless him. I'm so proud of him. My dad was an electrician and a welder and a brilliant man. Any mechanical aptitude I get in life, I got from him. Um, and at the end of the day, I want to actually respond to a different comment in response to that question.
Okay.
I saw a comment on Patreon talking about, I had mentioned I had did the freeze chamber or something, and
Mhm.
someone had said, you and Bobby Valla are really saving the toy industry or something to that extent. And it was like, I am nowhere near on the level of Bobby Valla. And I want to just recognize and state for the record, I am, this is not my day job. This is something I just love doing and I take pleasure in doing. Bobby Valla put his life on the line literally by creating a toy company. And anyone on the chat who admires me, who wants to know who I admire Bobby Valla because he put his money where his mouth is, and he saw that a company like Hasbro was failing the market. And he said, I can do better. And he took the risk, and I hope he gets incredibly great rewards for that. So I'm a poor player who struts and frets his hour upon the stage and that is heard of no more compared to that man and compared to what his company does.
And at the risk of not wanting to minimize what you say, chat, in case you didn't know, Series 1 of Action Force is in stock at Big Bad Toy Store right now. So they
Mm.
finally got their container in, and not only are the pre-orders being filled, but they have stock over at Big Bad Toy Store of Series 1. So if you've been waiting, or you've been waiting to see if you could get your hands on them, go there after the stream, of course. But
Mm.
I would be remiss if we hadn't we've mentioned Bobby Valla like 7 times during this stream, and if I let the stream pass without mentioning, "Oh, by the way, you can go buy some Series 1 stuff now," I'd be a jerk. Um, but I certainly agree. When you're talking about there is a distinct difference between someone who forms a company to create product to sell in retail outlets, things like that, but to do so at such a high personal risk. Okay, that guy probably, I don't know this for sure, but probably financially leveraged his entire quality of life to make that happen.
Mm.
It's not a small risk. Um, he took his experience and his passion and frankly his balls, which are considerable, and just
Mm.
made it happen. And it's only getting better. Every time he reveals something new, I go, wow, why did I not see this coming? Because it just makes sense.
Yep.
And that is where the 6-inch toy space needs to be going. And I mean, I think it would be very, very simple to draw that through line to what Hasbro is doing with all of their lines, particularly with GI Joe. Like, okay, we're gonna lose this if we don't stop paying attention, and they're paying attention. So he's changing. Not only here's a toy line you can have, that's amazing, but when you're that prolifically and creatively driven, so much so, and the response is so good that you force companies that are 100 times or more your size to say, we need to rethink this or else we're going to lose. That's what happened with Kenner and Mattel, where Kenner was just destroying everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mattel's like, well, what can we do? Well, we can make big muscular guys. And then they did that. And then they changed the way things are done. And then that's how you get innovation, right? The conversation of late has really been about why are we getting the same things over and over and over again? Why is no one innovating? It's because people fear risk. People like Bobby Valla, people like yourself, they don't fear risk. It's worth a try. Be the person that says, why not? In a room full of whys. That's something Kevin Smith says a lot. And whether you like him or not, that's a really good philosophy in life. So even though you might not be a company driven goal person, you are bringing that same level of joy, that same level of innovation. It's just two different perspectives, and we need as many perspectives as we can. If 1 out of every 10 people in the toy collecting space had the kind of passion and drive and lack of fear that you do, or that Bobby does, I think we'd be in a lot more interesting space as a community. So much thanks.
Well, thank you. And I think it's about scale, and you're exactly right. And I mean, would I love to be able to? I mean, I've had a friend saying, you should, I have a company who can injection mold stuff, and we could, and I was like, I mean, I'm not ready to take that leap. I'm not ready to do what Bobby Valla did, which is I have to focus on my day job to pay the bills. This is a hobby slash fun. Other people watch TV at night. I do this. So, my wife complains. I watch an hour of like Australian reality TV, and then I come downstairs and design for an hour and a half. And she's like, well, again, she's a 3D printer widow. That's what she says. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, it gives me pleasure. And I know it gives Bobby pleasure. I know he loves what he does. And that's that old saying, if you do what you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I consider myself blessed because I love my day job and I love my hobby. I love my side hustle, as they call it.
Mm-hmm. And it shows. Your face lights up every time you answer a question about something, so it's working. Speaking of questions, and this isn't really a question, but Ben Sully says, "Can Joe come on again?" This has been great, and I have to agree. This has been amazing, sir.
Oh,
Because
well, thank you. And yes, I can come on and I can talk about Star Trek. I can talk about what else? Well, I can talk about GI Joe because if you look on my behind my shoulder, GI Joe is a real passion of mine, especially the 1964 version of GI Joe. Even though I collect both the Real American Hero and the '64 version. Yeah, I could talk about the weather if you want me to.
Fair enough, and we could certainly do that. Giraffes asks if the Corellian Corvette has foot pegs to stand Vader on over all the dead rebel scum.
I actually make small, and I included this with the freeze chamber. I make small stands that I include with the playsets, so that you can put the figure where you want it. The only place where I actually have foot pegs on any place that I did was for the gantry, because I have foot pegs on the turntable, so you can actually spin, so the figures can fight.
Right, and that's what I figured. Because I was just going to bring it up and say, yeah, get a figure stand. Come on, you're asking too much, you know.
And by the way, I want to no, go ahead. I wanted to throw another comment in there.
Yeah.
I had a dream the other day, and again, might be one of those dreams that just is a dream. But I had a dream that, like, next year, HasLabs introduced their next crowdfunding project, which would be a freeze chamber playset. And I woke up laughing.
Yeah.
And you know what? If that happened, and it probably won't, if that happened, I would be incredibly pleased. That would mean that more people could play with this thing. And I don't own the IP. If they want to do it, they can tomorrow. But I would take that what again. The greatest form of flattery is copying something.
Imitation.
Yeah. And I would consider that a really flattering moment. Probably will never happen, but a man can dream.
Well, I agree with Jim Salzberg here, who says the Star Wars team's not that bright. I would interject by saying there's probably designers on that team who are that bright, but the people making the decisions and greenlighting projects probably aren't. They don't see the value in creating value. Um, because the stuff that they have done, like the more or less true to scale Millennium Falcon that came out in the last couple of years, that was an impressive piece of engineering. They did a lot of cool
Yep.
stuff, and relative to what it is, the price wasn't bad for what it was. It made
Yep.
sense. Maybe the method of distribution wasn't the smartest move, but at the same token, it's still attainable. You can still get the thing; it's out there, and
Yep.
I do give them credit where it's due. And the fact is, if they weren't creating things like the vintage collection, which even though again some of the decisions I'm like, what? But that toy line exists. And so if you're saying I demand more of a 3 3/4 inch scale figure in 2022 for Star Wars, that option does exist for you in a pretty big
Yep.
way. And they could abandon that toy line at any time. And they've shown that they're willing to keep pushing forward, even if it's not the push we want. It is a lot better than our only option being exorbitantly high priced 5 POA figures. And so I'll be the first one to criticize stupid decisions that they make, in my opinion. But on the same token, I also have to acknowledge that at least we have a toy line to admonish decisions being made about, as opposed to nothing. Not saying it's better than nothing, but it certainly is more than a lack of toy. Because better than nothing by itself is a phrase. I hate saying that out loud because that's not true. Because if they
Yeah.
were just putting out these like blobs of plastic with eyes on them, say this is Han Solo, you know, it's not.
Well, and again, my personal philosophy is I hate the new Star Trek. I think it's hot trash. But there are people out there who really enjoy it. And I'm not
Mhm.
going to tell people who really enjoy something, you're an idiot because you don't like what I like, or you like something I don't like. Like what you like. Be happy.
Mhm.
Life is too
Right.
short. And if you like something that I don't like, good. And likewise, I spend time watching Australian reality TV shows with my wife.
Mhm.
I'm like, if you look at the total amount of entertainment available in the world, that's like probably 1/1000th of a percentage point are people like me
Mhm.
who watch that. Does that mean I'm
Exactly.
better than people who don't watch Australian reality TV? No. It's just that I watch a particular thing not many people are into. So
And
there.
when we're talking about like canon, for example, of like cherished things from our childhood, a new thing attempting to iterate, in our opinion, poorly on that thing doesn't mean the thing that existed when we were kids just stops being a thing.
Yeah.
It is impossible to ruin a childhood after it has occurred. Your memories are
Yes.
still valid. And if I only choose to look at the old stuff, like to get like a 4K 77, 4K 82, 4K 83 Star Wars originals,
Mhm.
which I have the first and the third. They're still beta testing Empire at this point, which is the only reason
Yeah.
I don't have it. But I choose to watch those because it evokes that memory.
Yep.
The vintage stuff I collect because it brings back a memory. It reminds me of my parents who are gone, and it reminds me of those Christmases and things like that. And there's a new, for example, superpowers line that Todd McFarlane has put out, and there's some really
Yep.
cool things that are very mindful of the collector and of the nostalgia factor, and the price
Hmm.
point is reasonable. Say all you want about Todd McFarlane's business practices, but as far as he put out a modest wave of superpower stuff that more than most is respectful of the original, and it fits right in with those lines, and it's not going to break the bank. I respect that.
Yep.
Even if I don't like the designs on the figures, they exist. And that's awesome. The vehicles I could use with my superpowers toys, and I could leave the figures on the peg if I don't want them, or leave them on the
Mm.
card if I want to display them to have a carded superpowers figure. It's amazing. It's a wonderful thing. And I hope that they keep doing it. Even though I think the rest of his DC toys are hot trash, personally. I think the Mattel DC toys were, they knocked it out of the park for the most part. I came into collecting too late. that's on me. That's not Todd's fault. He
Yep,
swooped in and took
exactly.
the IP, and So Mattel, if you're listening, outbid the guy and get him back. Just reissue. Just take the old molds and reissue them. You'll print money, bro. You'll print
Yeah,
money.
and hire
Um,
that guy who wears a lot of purple to market your toys because he's really smart. He's a guru.
you didn't just say that. Sarcasm is real, kids. It's real. It's a
Yes,
thing,
it
and it's
is.
alive and well on the Grindhead stream. This is a very poignant question. Ben Sutley, being from the UK, he wants to know if it's possible to find you on the UK eBay store, and whether or not that's the case. What does international shipping look like for you at this point, realistically?
Yes. My eBay store is Joe-Dickerson, really original. It
And
is available
is
in
it?
the UK.
Mhm.
And I do ship to the UK, and I use eBay's international shipping methods, which means I ship products to a local distribution center. eBay
Mhm.
charges you an arm and a leg to ship it to where you're going. Now, in the
Right.
past, I've sold items on eBay I could not ship to the UK. For example, I recreated the Man from U.N.C.L.E. special gun from
Mhm.
the 1964 show. Customs don't like guns in the UK.
Right.
They don't like recreations of guns. I've even had people come to me and say, "Can you just send me the parts?" And I tried to send just the parts because it fits on an airsoft P-38, and they were blocked at customs. Now, the good news is eBay will refund the person's money, and I'm not out anything. But there have been in the past certain items I've sold that never got to their destination because of customs. So anyone who buys anything from a U.S. dealer in Europe or the EU or the UK, just be mindful that A, it will take a long time to get there. B, it will take a lot of money to get there, and I don't get that money. That's not going in my pocket. That's going in eBay's pocket, and
Right.
they should. It is literally an arm and a leg. So yes, I can sell to UK customers, but you might not like the shipping cost, which I can't do.
Right. And I want to call out a collector trope in that, yes, there are sellers on eBay that will jack up their shipping price to try and build back some profit that they're not making from fees and this and that. I can assure you that Joe is not one of those people. Looking at the shipping costs for the size of the things that he's doing, having just gone through something similar with Matt Swafford when we went through his Joe, he bought a lot of Joe stuff here locally in DFW. He paid for it. I went and picked it up, and then we did a live stream where we sorted through it, which was just a fun. It was like going through someone's toy box. It was great. And then we had to ship this gigantic lot of things, and the amount it cost to ship. And this is 6 months ago before inflation started hitting.
Yeah.
I, aha! I couldn't believe it. And we did everything we could. I worked with the UPS store while packing and condensing things and shipping in separate packages to make it reasonable and everything else. And thank Godzilla, it all got there in relatively good condition. But holy cow, does it cost a lot. So when I look at your shipping prices, I think they're accurate, if not gross, but that's not your fault
Yeah.
by any stretch. It's just the
It,
state of the
it's
world.
yeah, it's based on. I use the eBay. I don't set my own shipping price. It's all based on where you're at and how much it weighs. And I can't change the fact that even though I'm using lightning infill, something like this monster, it ain't gonna be light. It's
No,
gonna be a
no.
bit of a weight. So if it's a freeze chamber or even the $6 million man's death probe, the larger version is heavy.
Yep. Now, there are two things that I have been contacted by viewers prior to the show that I am contractually obligated to ask you about. One of those
So,
viewers is me. So the first one is there's we have an unprecedented amount. of Godzilla toys in the marketplace that we haven't seen in a long time. And they come in three scales. You get your reaction 3 3/4 inch scale, you've got a 6-inch scale, and then you have the 11-inch size. Now, I realize for 11-inch size Godzilla, what I'm about to propose is it's a bit much. So I'll
Okay.
scale back to 6-inch scale. How how difficult would it be to have, say, a couple square blocks of downtown Tokyo in a 6-inch scale and a 3 3/4 inch scale, unpainted, with roads and the whole thing? Maybe interlocking blocks or something like that, so you can expand or contract.
So, as someone who has been in Japan, and in fact, my youngest son Michael graduated high school during COVID. Our original plan was for me and him to go back to Japan to celebrate his graduation. COVID prevented that.
Sure.
One of the things that I've been working on is something called photogrammetry. You may have heard of the term.
Yes.
Photogrammetry allows you to take multiple pictures of an object or a building, and it renders a 3D scaled model of said object.
Mm-hmm.
And I might be pronouncing it wrong because it's been a long day. I've been up since 6 o'clock dealing with some stuff. But at the end of the day, this technology allows you to use a phone or a camera, DSLR, to take images of an object and then have a model you can manipulate. If I go back, one of my plans is to effectively scan big parts of downtown Tokyo. So, my son, who is a huge Godzilla fan, by the way, Michael has a lot of Godzilla stuff. We went to the Godzilla store in Tokyo, and he spent all the money he had and all the money I had.
You have to. If you're a fan, you have to.
Yes, absolutely. And I still have stuff. I have stuff, a shelf over there. I have stuff in the back. At the end of the day, if I go back, that is one of the things I plan on doing. And part of what I would use those models for is something very similar to what you just spoke to. So we are of a like mind in that space.
I like that.
Will it happen?
Well,
Will it happen? But we'll see. But it's something it's on the list.
I'm just saying, our relatively small channel is not without resources. And although I would never ever presume to start a Kickstarter for you. However, I am not above doing a benefit stream or 3 to where we fund a round trip ticket for you to Tokyo so you can do this. Because so chat, if that's something you want, let me know. We'll make some plans and we'll do some stuff. Because if that's, because I realize it's not just the cost. It's not like you're not a man. You're not without means. I know that.
Yeah.
However, the fact is, I know that there's time involved. You have to get time away from work, things like that. But as our way of saying thank you about an idea like that, or to be able to be involved on some level, okay, that would, and I'm already seeing chat. They're all like, "Yes, let's do this." So if you would be willing to allow us to help you with that, with no promise of product, with no promise of time frame, as for both when you go and when the thing arrives, we will be happy to assist at some point. So
okay, well, it is on the list because
okay.
I would love to do it just for myself and my son, and you know, I probably would do it. I would do it bigger. I wouldn't do 6-inch scale. You know me. I do things. I either go big or go home.
True. Well, I would personally ask as a favor, because there's other people that do collect, for example, the SH Figure Arts, the Monster Art stuff, which is a 6-7-inch scale.
Yep.
I think that those people would really love to have a truly amazing Tokyo diorama in that scale. I personally, I want the 11-inch Playmate size because I got a bunch of them, you know, and I could just switch out which Godzilla sits there, you know. And of course, like Hong Kong would be fun, but Hong Kong the only thing about Hong
Mm.
Kong to me, it's any other city with neon lights in it. Tokyo's freaking Tokyo, right? Tokyo's
Mm-hmm.
a whole other beast, right? And
100%.
yeah, and Jurassic with a stop at New York because King Kong needs some love. I'm like, I mean, it would not be now for those people that like Kong. Here's my proposition because this would you would not need a DSLR to do this. You just do the upper half of the Empire State Building in 6
Yeah.
and a 17 scale. Done,
Yeah.
done. That's easy. I mean, that's a weekend for you, you know. But
Well, a little
um,
bit longer. I want to add a little rivets there. I want to add some more detail.
that's fair.
All right.
I mean,
One more
okay.
question.
All right, one more question and we're done. All right. So I'm gonna take this one because there is something someone asked for. When we talk about Masters of the Universe, the vintage stuff, there's certain play sets that lack an interior, notably
Mm,
Snake Mountain.
yeah.
Something I've been looking into on my own. I don't have a 3D printer. I have friends who do, but something that would be very interesting to do would be to find a way with that particular set to try and find a way to have pressure mounted floors into that castle
Mm,
because the shell is there. You would just have to create some kind of slot base to where it would kind of grip and
mm,
perhaps engineer some sort of a support beam on the back. So, like, you have the floor, you've got the shell, you have a sloping thing that comes down and then comes out and clips to the bottom. There's various
mm,
ways to do it, but just something as simple as creating a floor to see if it works. And
mm.
if you do not have a Snake Mountain, one can be provided to you. If you need high res images, we can do that too. Because even though they've said they're going to release Eternia, that's coming. That's great, which seems to allude to an Origins Snake Mountain at some point in the next 2 years. And I'm sure that will be either perfect or it will just be "Ugh," because there's
Yeah,
various
hot garbage.
yeah, and then you've got the staircase out in the front of the piece as well as the
Mm,
bridge.
mm,
They need something that can interlock with those things to make an actual scale stairpiece, and
mm,
the bridge works
mm,
better. So in other words, adding on pieces that then make the playset make sense. Because I think if
mm,
we could modify an existing Snake Mountain, which are still attainable at a decent price, that would be that much more inspirational than trying to
mm.
redesign the damn thing from scratch. So I want to throw that
Okay.
in your.
All right. I will think about it. So, and
Oh,
with
yeah,
that, I have to go wee wee. So
no
I think
worries.
we did. I think we did close out the chat. I have the bladder of a 12-year-old girl.
That's
It's
fair
in a
enough.
jar in the back.
Fair enough. Well, I'll go let you get your jar, and I want to thank you so much for being an amazing, thoughtful, gracious, humble man. With everything that
Oh,
you do, and certainly for taking the time to be on the show. I hope your bladder doesn't burst, and I hope to speak to you again soon, my friend. Truly.
all right, brilliant. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for all the benevolence and gratitude in the chat. I deserve very little of it, but I appreciate any kind gesture. And um, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your appreciation. And again, that goes to you. That goes to you. That goes you over there. No, no, no,
Not
no,
that
no.
guy.
No,
Not
that
that
way.
guy.
No, no, not the guy selling the sex services. What? Get that guy out of
No.
there. I want to thank everybody for being here, and I want to thank everybody for the engagement. And you like me. You really like me.
We do, Joe. We really do.
All right.
Take care,
Bye,
man.
everybody. Take care.
Cheers, man. What a great talk. Um, I knew it would be fun. I knew we would probably get some interesting insight to what was happening. Um, I did not expect my face to hurt with the amount of joy that the last 2 hours gave me. And I'm really thankful that all of you were here to see it. If you're watching in the future, dude, we're gonna send them to Tokyo. And I realized that when you have as much prolific nature as he does, he's got so many projects that he wants to do. So anything that was talked about is I'll think about it. Bear in mind, it could be years before he gets a chance to really sit down and tackle something like that. So be patient. Um, the link to his eBay is in the description. Please go there, check out his blog, which is in the chat earlier in the thing. If I think it was Epic Badger who pasted it. If you just paste that to me in Discord, I'll just go ahead and update the description for that as well. Um, but I just want to, and the Tower of Darkness. He mentioned that it's something he wants to do. He already mentioned that he's going to work on it. He's not even at the design stage yet at this point. He's got about 3 or 4 projects ahead of that, but it is something he's already decided he wants to do as far as he can tell. So there's no time frame on this. As with anything else he's mentioned, because he's already working on the Blockade runner. There's certainly going to be iterations on Bespin World and the Gunstar. And so bear in mind, is a man. He is a man. He is one man working on a lot of different stuff. Um, he said when he brought up the Corvette, the gleam of eyes was precious. Well, thank you. I wasn't trying to be precious. I was just so happy to see something like that. Something I never thought that I would see with my own eyes ever in this life, and to know that that is a thing that exists, that is born of pure joy and pure love is it's wonderful. He's a hell of a guy. And and Joe's back. He said, "I went wee wee, so I'm in the chat now." There he is. Be nice to him, chat. Like I said, he's one guy. He's got a billion things he wants to do. Give him time to do the stuff he's doing, and he's going to continue to astonish and amaze us moving forward. So I'm going to wrap things up here, just to say that tomorrow night, tomorrow it'll be 5 p.m. Eastern time, so an hour ahead of when we normally do streams and when I normally do premieres. We are going to premiere the anniversary special. It is a 70-minute, 1 hour and 10-minute video, which goes over an overview of my history with toys, my history with my life, and history with music as well to a lesser degree. So those of you that want to know more about moi and where things are, and to celebrate the last year of all this toy content we've been doing, which is 100% enabled by folks like you. If you didn't watch, I wouldn't make it. So tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern, we'll see you for that premiere. And then this Saturday, we're going to have the toy auction benefit for Rolo, which I can't wait to do. Um, there's so much cool stuff coming, guys. So thank you all for your time. Joe, especially, for taking the time, and his little jar bladder. My bladder's been screaming for the last 15 minutes. I'm glad he said something. But and Giraffe says 70 minutes. How long is the director's cut? Will that come out later? That is the director's cut, sir. I cut out nothing of substance whatsoever. There's certainly going to be space for more long form content like that. It just depends upon what you guys want to know about. But it is the the culmination of a year. That's why it's so long. So where your depends, or watch it on your phone and bring a beverage. I will see you guys tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to keep it rolling all week long. So thank you guys so much. You are the best. I love you. We'll see you tomorrow.